I want to know what's on top of everyone's mind right now. I would also like to know if they could blame one person for the current state of things, who they would blame. I think a lot of people could blame Phil Mickelson. A lot of people could blame Jay Monahan. A lot of people could blame John Rahm, potentially. I would say those maybe be your three highest vote getters. I would like to know who the collective of professionals would like to blame the most. I'm a little too chaotic with these survey questions, but that's kind of where my brain goes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Whole Story Podcast. Robbie and Jonathan here. Today we talked to a new friend, Sean Zak, who's a senior writer at Golf Magazine and Golf.com. Actually written a book, came out in 2024, April of 2024, called Searching in St. Andrews. You guys need to go check that out. We need to check it out. I have not read it yet. But Sean was awesome. Jonathan, what'd you think of our conversation that we're about to hear from Sean?
Yeah, clearly a great storyteller and probably a better salesman than either one of us, because somehow he convinced his boss that he needed to spend 90 days in the UK for the 150th British Open. So I don't know who exactly you have to talk to and what you have to say in order to make that happen, but great stories, not only from the old course, but also just a perspective on golf after 10 or 11 years as an intern. Hopefully going to get a real job soon.
No, he was. It's a cool story, and like what we talk about, we love hearing how people got to where they are. And yeah, this started as an internship, and fell in love with it, and then thought about, do I really love it? Went to St. Andrews and said, yeah, I really do. But he has quite a story. I think our listeners will appreciate what he has covered. I mean, when he was flying over there, he said the name started dropping for LIV, and so he was there during the tumultuous summer of 2022 where, there were LIV events for the first time, and we had the big controversy at St. Andrews. Not controversy, but, Rory was trying to win, and Cam Smith ended up winning it. So yeah, it was a fun episode. It's fun talking to writers. Jonathan, what do you think about, I guess, the writers and their access to golfers? He talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, he talked about the relationship of that, and I thought that was interesting to think, like, honoring in today's society, right? They can control their own narrative. They could create their own social medias if they want to, and yet still to be able to trust, in some cases, a complete stranger. I mean, I don't know if they're friends because they're not hanging out, but to trust someone with whatever it is that you feel like you need to communicate as a professional golfer, and knowing that in this day and age it can be cut down into a one-line snippet that completely changes what you were trying to say. So just trying to honor that. And an interesting thing for those who have been paying attention to the Golf Magazine for a long time, he talks about the anonymous the polling they used to do.
Those.
Yeah, and sort of getting a little bit more direct answers from professional golfers because they knew they weren't going to be misconstrued. So just interesting to see it from both sides.
Yeah, and one of our favorites he talked about a good bit was Joel Damon. He seems to have a good relationship with him, caddied for him as well. And again, Joel, invite is always here when you're ready to join us and tell some fun stories. So, as we kick off this episode, we'll remind everybody we've got friends of the program, Holderness and Bourne, rocking a Holderness and Bourne hoodie right now. Love it on a nice, cool afternoon. Check them out, hbgolf.com. Get you some good stuff. Western Birch makes incredible golf tees. When we were at Landman, we were scattering those things left and right, as well as many of our friends. But yeah, you customize them with any colors, logos you want to do at westernbirch.com. And both of those you can use a promo code BestBall. And finally, again, we have a new partner, new friend of the program, in Vice Drinkware. And so, Jonathan, as we kick off this episode, let's raise a glass and a toast to this episode of the Whole Story Podcast. Today's guest on the Whole Story podcast, joining us from the windy and kind of gray city today, is Sean Zak. Sean is the senior writer at Golf Magazine and golf.com. He's the author as of April 2024. You probably have a ton of other books, but you wrote Searching in St. Andrews, and want to hear more about that. But Sean, welcome to the Whole Story podcast.
Thank you for having me, guys. That is the only book I've written, and you're right, it is extremely gray. I live in a high-rise building, one of the many high-rise buildings in Chicago, and so when it gets foggy, it's like extra foggy. Usually I can look out and see a nice driving range, but I can't see anything right now, so I'm locked in on you guys.
High-rise book sales must be good.
I was about to say, yeah. Once you get the penthouse, you're above the fog. You don't have to worry about that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We're not there yet, but Chicago just has so many high-rises. It's almost like an inevitability. You'll end up in one of them.
Well, before we start, let's ask, are Cubs or White Sox guy?
Neither. Okay. I'm from Wisconsin originally, so I'm a Brewers fan, and I've very much just enjoyed the Packers beating the Bears in Soldier Field yesterday. So I didn't go to the game, but was driving around town afterwards and saw many Chicago fans extremely upset. So it was good to be me yesterday.
There you go.
Well, I mean, it could be worse. You could be a Cubs fan. I'm a Cardinals fan, so I don't know if that helps. But
yeah, there's some community there.
National League Central still works.
Yeah.
Well, very nice. Yeah, go ahead, John.
We could continue to talk about baseball, but unfortunately, Robbie makes me talk about golf on the golf podcast. So, you mentioned, like we just talked about, you work for golf.com. We're going to get to the book. I'm assuming you didn't just start your golf career in 2022 when you somehow moved to St. Andrews for 90 days. So where did golf come into play? Were you one of those kids like pitch and putt at 3 years old, or did it come in later in life?
It was slightly later in life. I really took to the sport in the summertime when I would visit my grandparents. I would always go spend a week with my dad's parents, and my grandpa was a ranger, a retiree, but a starter ranger, driving range picker, kind of do-it-all person at this little course in a tiny town in Wisconsin. And I would just go there at 8 in the morning, and I would screw around and just, hit 300 golf balls, chip and putt, sneak out for 9 holes by myself, and then at the end of his shift, we'd go play together. So it was just essentially golf camp 1 week of summer for me when I was probably 13 or 14, and that basically pushed me into working at a country club in the local area growing up. That really, the golf bug bit so hard, and even though I played other sports, it just became the one that was constantly calling, the one that you can't perfect, the one you just are always wanting to get better at, but somehow, the skill set is not a very linear, increasing movement. So then I, started writing about golf a little bit, studied journalism in college, and then got an internship at Golf Magazine, 11 years ago now, and have been there ever since. So
that's a long internship.
Yeah, I know. It's true. They fortunately do pay me an annual salary now, but it was humble beginnings that have really worked out for me.
That's awesome. So what was the first story you did there at Golf Magazine? Yeah,
the first thing that I really worked on as an intern was what Golf Magazine used to do. They did an annual survey of PGA Tour pros. They would interview anonymously, on the back of a driving range. We went to Congressional when the tour used to be visiting D.C. annually, and we went and basically tracked down 50 tour pros, or 50 or 60, and just had them answer yes or no questions, and questions that would get answers quickly. And I'm sitting there with a little clipboard and just marking them off. Do you think pace of play is an issue? Yes or no? Do you think players should be paid more? These same issues that kind of continue to dominate the tour and news cycles. But what was so just invigorating was oh wow, you can do this as an intern. You can get very frontal facing time with pro athletes. I kind of really just enjoyed the stories that we were able to tell with that survey, and it was kind of a pretty perfect internship thing because no one gets a byline on an anonymous survey, and none of the tour players were afraid to speak with you because they knew it was all anonymous. And so you really got a lot of unfiltered access that kind of hooked me. And yeah, that was kind of the start of it all. We look back on it. We don't run that survey anymore, unfortunately, because times have changed. Players have gotten a little bit more angsty toward the media, a little bit less willing to kind of like give you 10 minutes for a survey. But there was some gold in that.
Watch out for the kid with the clipboard.
Yeah. You should take that survey to just a regular driving range and be like, here, I got $5 here on the clipboard. If you answer these 10 questions, we'll buy you a bucket of balls.
Oh, yeah. You would definitely get some – you'd find out a lot about the American golfer. One thing about that survey that I loved was that a couple years later, Ricky Fowler was voted as the most overrated player on tour. This would have been the year he won the Players, so I think 2015. And now when you poll 50 or 60 players, if like a group of 6 or 7 of them vote for the same guy, that's going to be your leader for the most overrated because you'll get a bunch of different names. Yeah. And so Ricky and Ian Poulter, I believe, tied for most overrated among the players we surveyed, and that became a big headline. And then that week of the Players, it comes out, Ricky's being asked about it all. Lo and behold, goes out and wins that week, and I think was asked about it like afterward. It was great publicity for us, but also for him because he's like, no, I'm not overrated at all. I just won the Players. It was quite a talking point. That was probably the peak of those surveys.
I remember that. He was throwing some darts on 17 too.
Oh yeah, same wedge every time.
Awkward locker rooms at that point, right? You're like, if you were one of the guys that anonymously said he was overrated, you're just like avoiding him because you missed the cut on Friday and he's still there.
Well, the thing that was also funny was that Ian Poulter completely like missed the whole overrated part. It was the fact that Ricky's the marketing savvy, very commercial laden guy who wears orange. Everyone was like, of course he's overrated, and Poulter didn't get any of the same fanfare for that.
Yeah, everybody just said, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's it been like lately writing for golf? I mean, I know we'll get into the stories behind searching in St. Andrews, but golf world has kind of changed as far as, I guess, stories and, like you said, access from players, people wanting to talk or not wanting to talk. So what's it like? Do you travel around much, going to a lot of events still? Yeah,
I probably go to 6 or 7 or 8 maybe tournaments a year. Most of the majors and the Ryder Cup, President's Cup, and then a handful of others. It has been a fascinating time to cover the game. And before I dive into why it's fascinating, I will say I am ready for this era to be over, or at least moving in a slightly different direction. I would like some newness to it all. And by that, I'm mostly just referring to the kind of stalemate with the PGA Tour and its potential investors. But it has been fascinating because a lot of people do not agree on necessarily where the game is going or has been the last few years, or even the years prior to that. There's a lot of people that believe your John Rahms and Phil Mickelsons and Dustin Johnsons are 100% in the right to do however they please as independent contractors. And then there's a lot of people who feel the exact opposite, which is that they shouldn't be shirking the PGA Tour for hundreds of $millions elsewhere. And so that polarity, having such distinctly different viewpoints from a lot of people who care about them, particularly the people involved. There are 200 to 250 people that can call themselves at least conditional PGA Tour members. It makes it very interesting to try to find out, where are all these opinions? Is there anybody in the middle that can be swayed? It's quite political, frankly, and that makes it interesting to cover the sport because you have to think about a lot of different entities and why they matter, and the agents and the families of players, the future families, the legacies. I was thinking about Phil Mickelson just the other day and how he is so quiet right now, and he has found a lot of comfort in being quiet, and I'm actually happy for him on that front. As a player who has long been one of the most vocal and most public PGA Tour players, I think Phil has found an element of peace in his current life. He had to go through some really difficult times to get there, and I'm so curious if he'll stay there. So that's why I think it's fascinating, because you're really dealing with human instincts, human emotions, very human issues of money and politics. And that's what's funny is, like, you can only last in this era for so long before it's like, okay, can we just kind of go back to the birdies and bogeys and really just get back to guys winning tournaments?
All of this surrounding a little white ball that's on some green grass, right? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. And but I really mean that. It has forced me to read a lot of legal documents, and it has been invigorating in many ways, but exhausting in others. So, frankly, like, we're filming this today, the day after Rory wins in Dubai, and it's a very I think full circle moment for 2024, because I was privileged enough to go to Dubai when he won the Desert Classic in January. First time I'd ever been to Dubai. Opens up my eyes quite a bit on a part of the world I had not been to. Rory wins. You fast forward 10 months, Rory wins again down the street at a different golf course. And during that entire year, it's like, have we, what have we accomplished as a golfing ecosystem this year? There has been certainly plenty of things accomplished. It's been a lovely year in golf, but the kind of bookends of Rory winning in Dubai, it just kind of has merely just clarified it all for me in a way.
Well, if Golf Magazine came to you now and said, hey, I need you to write 3 questions, we're going to give you a clipboard and anonymously talk to these players, what do you think the 3 questions that you'd be asking to really maybe culminating what's gone on over the last 18, 24 months, or maybe where they think the game's going next?
Gosh, that is a good question. I would want to know if players, if tour players are professional golfers, you maybe would have to do different surveys, one for LIV Golf and one for tour players. But I would want to know, like, what single thing upsets them most when it comes to pro golf. What thing irks them? Is it the amount of money you make? Is it the reputation of the game? Is it I don't know, maybe the structure of how the tour is and how many players are allowed to have memberships. I would like to know the singular thing, and I think your survey would probably result in a number of answers. But there's been a lot of problem solving, if you will, the last few years, right? Like, there was a big deal when Jon Rahm just wanted more porta potties around the golf course, and you know what? He got it, right? The PGA Tour instituted that. So there's been, I want to know what's on top of everyone's mind right now. I would also like to know if they could blame one person for the current state of things, who they would blame. I think a lot of people could blame Phil Mickelson. A lot of people could blame Jay Monahan. A lot of people could blame Jon Rahm, potentially. I would say those maybe be your 3 highest vote getters. Certainly Patrick Cantlay would earn a vote or 2. So that's kind of what I think about, is like, there's voting blocks, I think, in this negotiation phase. And I think each voting block understands the power that they hold. And I would like to know who the collective of professionals would like to blame the most. I'm a little too chaotic with these survey questions, but that's kind of where my brain goes.
With you being around the game for so long, and obviously having backstage access that all of us wish we were interns now for 11 years, because that would have been awesome. But where do you see the differences between, say, the guys that are maybe almost losing their card or fighting to get their cue card back versus answers from guys that are like in the top 10? Because there is a reality to, like a Rory McIlroy going, hey, this is not, we need to fix this, as opposed to the guys that now have to go play lots of different tournaments because of what the PGA is doing to make sure that the stars are in play all the time.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the main difference is that players of let's say the top 15 to 20, they're so confident and are so probably likely to guarantee that they will be on tour for the next decade. They just know if they have one bad year, it won't be 2. They'll be back on top in the following season. And so I think you'll hear questions or answers that revert to the product and basically just trying to grow essentially the amount of TV revenue. And and you can grow that revenue in a couple different ways by getting greater sponsorships, but also by improving the product. I think that that's something that those players would focus on the most. I think players that are around 100 to 150, they are exclusively focused on opportunities because there's a lot of self-awareness in that. They know where they are. I'll never forget Joel Damon saying, like, someone has to be the 78th best golfer in the world or something like that. That came from a place of stunning awareness by Joel, and currently he's struggling to be the 78th best golfer in the world. But a lot of those guys are aware that for over a decade, the tour has been handing out 125 like full status memberships, and that is now bound to change. Extremely bound to change. It's going to change. And so they are essentially seeing 15 to 20% difficulty increases just to kind of maintain the same lifestyle that they have been. And I don't know, like if you told me, hey, Sean, it's going to get 20% tougher for you to have the same job you have next year, like there's no way I would take that well. Like there's no way I would handle that well. I would probably be kicking and screaming in the same way that some of them are. And so I don't blame them, but I guess where I come from is I really try to see the middle of both sides, where it's like I think the tour does need to work on its product, and I think at some point you can do that by making it more competitive and opening pathways, and that would ultimately kind of make it a little bit more cutthroat. There is going to be, though, a ceiling on how cutthroat you can make this thing before you end up turning people off, or not necessarily turning them off. You end up turning people away that could become something incredible. Or the story of Joel Damon, to use him as an example, if that happened 4 years from now, then Joel isn't on the PGA Tour and he doesn't star in Netflix's show. And you end up losing what is a very popular and also common story on the PGA Tour. There are a lot of players of his ilk that are really great people and are incredibly talented and are just trying to find out how good they can be. A recent story of that, to keep rambling, is Justin Lauer, who is like, he's going to be on the PGA Tour next year. He's going to have full status. He's going to be in really good shape. But he wants to know if he can win because he's not won on the PGA Tour. He wants to know if he can qualify for the signature events. He wants to know if he can make it to the Tour Championship, which he's never done. And the more cutthroat you make it, the more of those people are just never going to get a chance. So we're talking about like products and chances and money and opportunities. That's kind of where those ends of the spectrum net out.
Well, you talked about Joel Damon being a good story, and yes, it made for great content on Full Swing there on Netflix. How does the tour, how does golf, I know you are a storyteller in your writing, how do we get more of these stories of the guys like a Joel Damon, like a Justin Lauer, in front of people in creative ways that kind of makes people buy into the underdogs or the guys that are fighting for their cards?
Yeah, I think it's a two-way street. It's incumbent upon people like me doing a good job, doing the right job, and maybe not being asked to do some of the maybe journalism that has like become popular in the last 15 years, which is more focused on just total number of viewership and quantity. So focused on doing really, really quality storytelling that proves to the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, the LIV Golf Tour, it proves to the tours and the people that play on them, hey, like there's an outlet here for your story to be told. You have to lean in too. That's a very unspoken thing about Joel Damon. He is not afraid to talk to anybody, like at all. He loves talking to people. He loves telling his story. He loves finding out your story, right? And that makes him pretty rare, I think. I think it's no surprise that when anyone thinks about maybe who the most popular and media savvy tour players, a lot of people name Joel right off the top. That's just the human that he is. And so I think you need people ranked around Joel's skill set to open themselves up and be willing to. And that comes with not being unafraid to, right? There's a little bit of a fear of having your story told. I don't blame people for that. I have certainly been approached by like local news publications back where I grew up. Hey, let's talk about Sean, and what he's up to now. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm being asked to do the thing I ask people to do. I don't know how much I like this. And so it's really a handshake that you need to kind of, it's a relationship that needs to be honored by both sides. And to some extent, I think it really works out well. But in this like current era, it's been, I think, difficult to tell those stories because there's been so much change and there's been a good bit of angst and maybe just like things that it's not to say that it's more important, the pro golf wars, than like, the guys fighting for tour cards, but it's just been really easy to go in that direction because guys have opinions about it and want to talk about it, and they almost would rather talk about that than talk about themselves.
Well, this is an open invite. If Joel wants to come tell a story,
right,
let's come on the Whole Story podcast. Gino can come with him. Anybody that wants to come can come on. So
yeah, Sean, I thought that was going to be your first quick answer. Like, well, if we get more people on the Whole Story podcast, they can just tell their own story. It'll just be super easy. So,
well, you know what? Like, there's an element of golf podcasts that just are really good for these sort of things. Just laying out, and I think the thing that's a little tricky is tour players are so used to telling their story to pro-am partners and sponsors, and when it comes to something like this, it's like, no, man, we're gonna have a beer and talk about it. I think unless you put your foot in your mouth, there's kind of nothing bad that can come from it.
Absolutely.
You're talking about us or them?
No, definitely no.
Sorry.
Well, we can edit it down, so if they put their foot in their mouth, we can help them out. So let's take out the controversy. Let's take out some of this. Like, what would be kind of your dream story to tell that you haven't told yet?
Ooh. That I haven't told, and it has to be realistic, right?
No. We can go.
Hold on. Let's start with the fact whenever you say it has to be realistic, and here in about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to talk about you spent 90 days in like realistic has gone way outside the door for regular people. So.
That's very true. I think this is not incredibly unrealistic, but I was asked this a couple weeks ago. Basically, I think the story in golf I'm maybe most fascinated by is probably like the next 10 years of Tiger's life, and I feel bad highlighting Tiger because he's the only guy we like always talk about, and he is the most he'll be the most important golfer that ever lived. And so it's very easy to kind of like go in that direction. But I think for the first time in his life, the last maybe 2 years, he has come to grips with, okay, every day of my life is going to be different about that because of that car accident, and just how he goes about living a different life. That's obviously inclusive of him as a father, him shielding, his avid golfing son from the world that is like thirsty for the next Tiger Woods. Him in a powerful role within pro golf and how much he wants to stay in it. I think the Tiger away, this is a man who owns a boat that's called privacy. That's why it's probably unrealistic. But I do think the Tiger that's at home on a Tuesday is still a very important and interesting person in the world of golf. He would never see it that way. But, that would be the dream. Because I think with the right storyteller and the right amount of buy-in from Tiger, I think we might get there in time. Not necessarily me or even modern media, but at one point he signed up to do a book, a memoir. He did sign up for that, and it was, as far as I know, commissioned to be done by the same author who ghostwrited Andre Agassi's memoir, which is called Open, which a lot of people like in the industry highlight as like the best sports memoir and one of the best memoirs out there. Now, Andre Agassi, he's a bit more open than Tiger Woods and hasn't had nearly the amount of controversy that has surrounded his like off-course life. But if you could get like half as deep with Tiger as that writer got with Agassi, you would have something really special for the golf and sporting world. And so I think there's something there's like the door is not shut. It is somewhat open. We'll see if Tiger ever walks through it, though.
Well, we're pretty confident he's a regular listener to the podcast. So, Tiger, give Sean a call. He'll be happy to help you with this.
Yeah.
Well, you spent an incredible summer, one that most golfers would be jealous of. In 2022, you hung out in Scotland for the entire summer for 90 days. How did that come about? And we watched the video. Recommend everybody check out SeanZak.com. You can kind of see a little behind the scenes video of this. But yeah, tell us how this came about.
I want to know how you pitched that to your boss. Be like, hey, listen,
Yeah.
I feel like someone needs to spend a summer overseas just hanging around the old course. Because,
Yeah,
Chicago's foggy.
I got lucky, man. Yeah, I got lucky. It was about this time of year in 2021 that I was just like, okay, another year is in the books in terms of like golf work. And I was single and I was about to turn 30 and I was just thinking like, okay, is golf the sport that I want to devote to? And Live Golf did not exist to that point, which is kind of wild to think about. But I was a little unsure. Like, okay, I've worked in this business for about 10 years. Like, is this the business that I want to continue working in? And like, I really love it, but there are certainly parts of the sport that I don't love. I would love for it to be a little bit more, have a little bit more diversity and to be like way more welcoming, I think, to different audiences. And I think it's naturally continues to move in that direction. But maybe the pace by which it did or does isn't as quick as I would hope. And maybe I'm being unrealistic, but I just really wanted to see it. And I don't know if I was seeing it in Middle America quite as much. But I knew that if I wanted to like make a decision on this sport, I feel like I needed to understand it better abroad. And so the pitch was, hey, the Open is coming to St. Andrews, the 150th in July. What do you think about me going there for a month and a half prior and a month and a half after? And I'll just cover the sport for golf.com from St. Andrews. And I also like made the pitch slightly rosy. I was like, don't worry about paying my rent. Like, I'll get someone to sublet my Chicago place. I'll take care of rent. You just pay for me like to cover the Live Golf event when it launched in London, or pay for me to cover the Scottish Open. Or like the Women's Open that summer ended up going down to Muirfield. And so that was going to be the first Muirfield Women's Open, the first Muirfield Women's event. Like, that was going to be a very big week in its own right. And so I laid out this 13-week schedule and said, like, I'll essentially do 2 articles that are St. Andrews based per week. And then I'll still do the rest of my job, which means like working on East Coast hours, which meant that I was going to be working essentially from like 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. most days. And I think the fact that I had built up maybe 8 or 9 years of experience and they saw a little bit of something brewing in that town, they said, screw it, go for it, Sean. But don't find yourself working less. Definitely do what you can and see what you can find. And it was, of course, like by the time my flight like left the Eastern Seaboard, Live Golf had launched its first like list of players. And so I was like very quickly like, oh crap, like what is this summer actually going to turn into? And it was I think it'll be remembered as one of the weirdest summers ever, oddly.
Yeah, I can't imagine getting on the plane and seeing that list come out and be like, well, I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm going to start writing. But so you stayed in the town of St. Andrews, correct?
Yeah, I stayed about a mile south of the old course.
Okay. What was had you been there before? I'd
been there for maybe 1 or 2 nights during like the Carnoustie Open in 2018. So yeah, it's a tiny town. Like to go a mile south of the old course is like kind of the town limits.
Yeah. So I visited with my family years ago. Didn't play. Looked at the course. Jealous of all the golfers out there. But what were you hoping to find in the actual town itself during that time, apart from the golf, or were you seeking out? I don't know, just the history of it.
A little bit of that. I think just a little bit of like, if golf has been here being St. Andrews for the majority of its existence, like what is different about it here, and why has it been so good in Scotland to the extent that everybody raves about it? And how is it better there than it is in Chicago or in New York, where I lived for a number of years? In parts of America, like American golf is different, and everybody swears by that. And there are parts of it that are actually really great that I really like, and there are parts that are very different that I don't like. And so I really wanted to just understand that extra element of the game that I wasn't getting. The fact that like you could pretty much play, if you try, you could pretty much play any golf course in the country. Frankly, the extent of like Muirfield might be off limits slightly, but they open their doors to guests far more than country clubs do in America. And I wanted to kind of understand why that is. The economics of golf abroad are very interesting and certainly different. The willingness to have no golf carts, but also dogs running all over the place. Like these little things that are certainly, in a way, frowned upon at times here. Like why is that the case over there? And if this sport is everything that I think it can be, like has it been perfected over there, or is there even things that they need to work on too? That's a bit vague of an answer, but that's kind of what I was going into. Is like I need to be here during the Open. I need to see the golf world come in, but I want to know what it's like before, and I want to know what it's like after. And I think that I just think that story was sort of worth telling.
So what did you find? I mean, 90 days is a long time. You obviously didn't just stand at hole number one with a clipboard and ask random questions. So like as you traveled the country, as you began to experience the people in different places, was there one thing that kind of was this aha moment of, man, if we could just bring this back to the U.S., it would solve so many problems?
Yeah. The only thing that's really tough is I kind of want their soil. Like I want their turf, which is based off of sand, and you can't just get that in, Indiana, if you will. And which is unfortunate because I think that is the lack, pun intended here, like that's the ground on which St. Andrews in Scotland, their economic system stands on. Because the sand or the soil is so sandy, it drains so well. You can play golf in St. Andrews pretty much 365 days a year, and the upkeep is not so intense. You don't have to use water. You embrace when the grass is brown rather than when it's green. It is also embraced when it's rainy and windy, and these sort of things that sometimes American golfers shy away from, maybe Scotland golfers lean into. And I do think that it's a very tiny way of changing the golf ecosystem, but anything that would, I guess that makes it a lot cheaper over there, and then therefore the courses can stay in great shape. They're very old, so you have a bunch of visitors that want to come play them. They don't charge locals all that much money, but they do charge visitors for that one experience. Suddenly you have this kind of pyramids issue where it's okay, we'll take care of the soil. Okay, now we'll take care of the memberships. Okay, we got the visitors who are essentially our international marketers. It all kind of tends to line up where the golf ecosystem there is not so, hey, you got to pay $500 to play Whistling Straits because it's green and it's on the lake and it's the tee times are so crazy and there's a bunch of corporate influence. That's the kind of stuff I think that has gotten out of hand in America, unfortunately, and you just don't see it much over there.
So you wrote a book, Searching in St. Andrews. Kind of give us the 30-second pitch of what the book's about. Obviously, you've been talking, I'm sure a lot of these stories are in there, but why should somebody go to Amazon, go to the bookstore, and grab a copy?
Well, I think I was turning 30, and I wanted to fall fully head over heels for the game. I was it's kind of there, and I wanted to really lean all the way in, and I just think that the only place to do that as best as I could would have been during an open summer and the home of golf. And so the book is essentially my way of refalling in love for the game, which is not to say that I disliked the game, but it was me proving to myself, no, this is a game that I think I can do for a lifetime and work in and find the secrets of the game, invigorating when I'm 32 today, and hopefully when I'm 62 and 72, right? And I think that's a realization a lot of people have over time in this sport. They do really fall for it, and you can do it forever. But I think the ways that I fell for it, particularly that summer, will be different than other people and who weren't in my shoes. So it's a little bit of a travel log. Like, come on, join me. Sit on my shoulder as I like run into people, do different things to invoke Joel Damon's name again. I caddied for Joel at the Scottish Open, and like to be a bird, a fly on the wall for all those kind of things, I think makes it a pretty fun tale.
Are you already planning what your midlife crisis book's going to be and where you can pitch that to your boss? Because this feels like an early midlife crisis of, I want to keep doing this forever. And then you come back to your boss in 10 years and be like, listen, here's the deal.
Yeah, now I'm going to go to Australia.
90 days. There we go. Yeah, perfect.
I honestly think that is a pretty interesting way and like sound way of describing it. It's like it might have been a little bit of a, not so much a crisis, but like an early life angst, right? Which is like, okay, man, like there's a lot of paths out in front of you. Like, do you want to pick the golf one? Okay, like let's prove it to ourselves. And I do think what's nice about it is it intersects so much with the pro game, and the pro game was working through its own angst, continues to. But during that particular summer, I mean, you really had two warring sides, and you had the women's game being forgotten about, and all these sorts of things that were bubbling up at different points that I was able to kind of be behind the scenes for.
Well, you did kind of have a front row seat to the outcome of the Open. So what was it like being there watching the one everybody wanted to see win, Rory, have it taken from him by Cam Smith? It
was pretty chilling. I think Cam is a lovely dude, and he's so chill, and if he's a world-class golfer who during that summer was probably playing the best golf of his life, and he is precisely the type of player who could steal an Open from Rory, because Rory has shown sometimes an inability to just get the ball in the hole on Sundays, and Cam Smith has shown an ability to make putts from anywhere on the planet. And so it all really lined up on that back nine. And I'll never forget like walking home that night. We've written our stories. It's past midnight. It's like almost 1 a.m. And the pubs in town have like a little bit of a murmur to them. They're not like, there's not that many people that are still out, but I just promise you, if Rory had won, like there would be people maybe still in the streets. The pubs would be completely full, and people would be going crazy. And it just goes to show, like, there was a bit of a native son that had been adopted that week, and he did not win. And that doesn't mean that like Cam Smith was wrong for winning, or that they couldn't have also like embraced Cam Smith. But it was the quietest 64 I think that won a major that will ever happen. And yeah, it felt like everything was tinier because of it. And but that doesn't make me dislike it. Like I really like that result happened, because I think it more than anything just kind of continues advancing Rory's story. And like, holy cow, man, you can't get any closer to like a truly iconic win than that one, and you somehow missed it. We'll talk about it forever.
He's had a couple of those.
Yeah.
More than a few to write about, I'm assuming, in the last 10 or 11 years.
Yeah. So besides working nonstop, I know you worked the whole time if your bosses are listening, but how much golf did you get to play while you were there?
I probably played like 15 to 20 rounds. I can't remember. It might have been 20, which is plenty for 3 months. Maybe twice a week, 4 times on the old course. And so very spoiled to have done that. But it wasn't like I was out there every single day. That would be the ultimate, based not in reality sort of summer.
Yeah. We'll take the real answer off the air.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'd be like, I told you I worked from 1 to 10. I played golf from 6 a.m. until 1 p.m. every single day. We always talk about golf as, and I'm assuming a few rare cases where you're playing, but mostly it's who you're playing with. So is there anything that stands out just in terms of, if you played 10 or 15 rounds, you got to play with 30, 40 people. Was there any one that just sort of stood out as, this is a moment I'm going to remember just because of the people I played with?
Totally. Ironically, it's like kind of how I started the book, was just introing people into what could be a very random, I think it was a Thursday night, I can't remember, on the old course. We had the last tee time off. I was playing with a friend I had met named Pete, I think it's Kahig, but it might be Kuig. Either way, Pete was a CFO for a like third level club in the English football system, and I had happened upon him because he's a golf nut, and he was in St. Andrews during the Open, and played with him and just two of the random buddies that he knew from the St. Andrews Golf Club, which is like located on the 18th hole there, and these guys were just these such different people. One is like a Scottish he lived in St. Andrews and owned a flat, and the other was this guy who grew up in Hawaii who had broken his foot and was playing in a walking boot, and both of those guys were just like one was a little bit more round, and the guy with the broken foot was like rail thin and like smoking cigarettes, but these two guys were like best friends, bound by the game of golf and bound by their visits to St. Andrews. And the fact that you could just on any given night happen into those people, because the St. Andrews doesn't allow you just to book a foursome, right? You end up playing with a lot of strangers when you play the old course. That's one of its gifts. Like, people hate that you can't just guarantee your foursome will be on the first tee for that photo, but it gives you things in a much more subtle way that I don't think you would get otherwise.
God, that sounds much
perfect.
Fun. Yeah, very nice. Well, we ask everybody to talk about their own game a little bit, and you said you have listened to at least one episode before. So we ask everybody, what is your most memorable golf shot?
Oh, my most memorable. Well, so I'm right now at 8.0 index. I will fluctuate in the high 7s and low 8s, which all of which means like I'm fully capable of breaking 80 and kind of shooting a 75. I have 0 holes in one, which is really sad.
We're all tied.
Yeah. I think my most memorable shot. Gosh, I wish I had a good answer for you. I hit a shot that summer at Ely Golf Club, which is down the coast, maybe 20 miles from St. Andrews, and I think it's the 12th hole, which is this. It's a cape hole on the, I guess what would be on the North Sea. And I had blown my drive. This was a point in my life when I was really battling the big right miss, and I had missed horrendously to the right. And we're also playing into the wind, and so I hit, I think I topped a 3-wood at that point, and then I hit like a little bit of a stinger sort of thing to like maybe like 40 yards away from the hole, but I was very much back in the fairway. And I said, screw it, like I'm putting this because, that's what you do in the links land. And so from about 40 yards, I hit this putt rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. And of course it falls in for like the stupidest par you could ever imagine making. And I remember my opponents on the green had completely written me off. They thought they were going to go like 3 up. And suddenly I think they had both made 5, or maybe either tied the hole or I won the hole from them. And that one sticks out because to see the look on their faces and to see their shoulders drop from someone who has no business making 4 is kind of that's definitely one of the most memorable.
Routine par.
I've got to get the links golf. Deal. That putting thing from off the green is that's my jam.
It's cheat code.
Yeah, I'm not very good at anything else, so I might as well just put it up there.
Hey golf friends, this is Robbie from BestBall. Are you looking for the ultimate Myrtle Beach golf experience? Well, it's only a click away. Check out the 2-play special at 2 of America's most awarded public golf courses and 2 of my personal favorites. Caledonia Golf and Fish Club and True Blue Golf Club are low country masterpieces featuring 2 iconic Mike Strantz designs. Play these 2 incredible courses for one great price. Visit truebluegolf.com to learn more about the 2-play special and book your tee time today. That's truebluegolf.com.
Well, we always like to do a thing we call a quick 9 as well. Just go back and forth, just some quick, easy questions, hopefully. And I'm excited about this one because there's a lot to choose from, I think. What's the favorite course that you've played?
My favorite course is the old course. I know that's not a good answer right now. I think my favorite day, I was able to play Pine Valley a few years ago, on like the perfect October day, and we went straight from the 18th green to the first tee and played it a second time. And so that's about as braggy as I'll get. But that was that stands out above everything else.
All right. In your time there in Scotland, what was your favorite hole-in-the-wall golf course that you played?
I didn't play it that summer, but a couple of summers since I've played Dunbar, which is down the coast from North Berwick, along the coast. It's fantastic. The entire course exists between this like rock wall and the sea, and it's always windy and always just like empty every time I visited, which is both sad but also great. You can go at your own pace. Dunbar stands out like in a big way.
Love it.
I'll have to write that one down. What course is at the top of your bucket list?
I feel like I need to. I haven't been to Bandon Dunes, which is a pretty glaring hole that seems rather achievable. I don't like the cost at Pebble Beach, but I feel like I need to get there. And then, like, if we're being hasty, I'd like to play down the street from Pebble at Cypress. But that one, like, that might never get crossed off the bucket list.
Have you won the media lottery at Augusta yet?
No, have not.
God,
So
good stories.
That's up there too.
If the Augusta folks can somehow rig that, that'd be some good stories. So.
If you ever need a place to stay and or a playing partner, I'm in Augusta, so
okay.
You get the
Nice.
media deal. I've got a place for you to stay. I'll just be your cat.
Hell yeah.
There you go. All right, who would be in your dream foursome?
It's a pretty lame. Well, you know what? I take that back. It's not a lame answer, but I really just would love to play like a solid course with my dad, brother, and grandpa. My grandpa, as I said earlier, taught me the game. He has since passed, and I just think that my dad and brother would get so much out of playing with like me in my current form, but also grandpa as well. So it's more of a heartstrings answer than it is any pro golfers we'd be playing with.
That's perfect.
No, pro golfers are boring. What course do you want to tell a story about?
Ooh, I wrote about one a couple weeks ago, so that one doesn't count. I think the story I would like to do requires me about like $2 million. Is I would like to take over the golf course, one of the golf courses I grew up playing down the street from. It's called Cherry Hills. It's in northeastern Wisconsin. The bones for it, like so many great courses, are there, but they've just rotted over time and like lack of like really good investment. And I think $2 million, it might be a little bit more, maybe $4 million. $2 million will get me the course, and then $2 million would also save it and like refashion it. That's a story I think you could tell in a pretty fun way.
Nice.
That'd be fun. All right. Are you a music on the course guy, and would it be Jump Around by House of Pain?
Good question. I am. I don't care if you want to listen to music with me. By all means, it doesn't bother me. I don't typically do it myself, but during COVID, when I was playing alone a lot, I was listening to podcasts, just walking the fairways by myself, and that was so lovely. Gosh, I long for that summer. As weird and as tragic as it was a really good one for me in my golf game.
Yeah. All right.
Little side note, he went to Wisconsin there, so that was the jump around plug. For those that are listening and wondering why that was the question, yes. I imagine you'd done that at Camp Randall a time or two.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Not right now, though. That team's struggling.
They had their glory days.
They'll be back.
All right. What is your favorite snack on the golf course?
Oh, man. I think the perfect snack at the turn is just a Gatorade and a Snickers bar. And sometimes I'll go 2 Snickers bars, but it happened this past Saturday. It's just like you tee off at, between 8 and 9. You haven't really had a whole lot, and you get hungry by the turn. Give me 1 Snickers and 1 Gatorade, and I'm going to finish strong.
There you go. Frozen Snickers?
I'm not opposed, but I think I'd like to be able to bite through it without hurting myself.
Not hurting your teeth. All right. Favorite golf course logo?
I'm a big fan of the Stanwich Golf Club logo. That's a club in the Northeast called Stanwich Club, and it's just a witch on a broom. I think there's a golf flag involved in some way. You'll have to check it out though. But I know like when they do these little like online social media logo brackets, it always performs really well.
Yeah, think somebody recently said that.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Last question. What is next for Sean Zak?
Gosh, good one.
Finish that internship.
Yeah.
And you can only do it in third person. You have to talk about yourself in the third person.
I think Sean Zak takes on 2025 golf season by making a lot more video content, a lot more straight to camera stuff that kind of provides some commentary on things that is hopefully quick and biting, but also people dive in without they know the news and they want to know maybe how to think about it. And I think hopefully I can take that on and give them something to think about.
Man, I'm looking forward to that. Very nice. Well, Sean, this has been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you you taking some time to sit down with us and talk about some golf.
You got it, guys. I appreciate it, and thanks for letting me chat about my life. It's been a fun one, but like you said, what's next? Hopefully something even better.
Well, we'll be here to follow along. But for Sean and Jonathan, this is Robbie. Y'all have been listening to another episode of the Whole Story Podcast.